Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times, a Prancing Pony podcast production. I'm the Man of the West, and after spending a year's worth of Third Age Thursdays diving deep into the poetry and songs from The Lord of the Rings, I've really been enjoying this series with our look at Middle-earth artifacts of the Third Age. Now, we've looked at artifacts from The Hobbit, Glamdring, Orcrist, Sting, and the Arkenstone, before a study of the heirlooms of Elendil in The Lord of the Rings, the shards of Narsil, the sword's reforging as Anduril, the Ring of Barahir, the Scepter of Enuminus, and the Elendilmere, or Elendilmiri as the case may be. Now this week, we'll look at what is probably my favorite of the artifacts of the Third Age, the Elessar. Let's introduce it the way that it's introduced in the text, from the chapter Farewell to Lorien. "Here is the gift of Celeborn and Galadriel to the leader of your company," she said to Aragorn. And she gave him a sheath that had been made to fit his sword. It was overlaid with a tracery of flowers and leaves wrought of silver and gold, and on it were set in elven runes formed of many gems the name Anduril and the lineage of the sword. "The blade that is drawn from this sheath shall not be stained or broken even in defeat," she said. "But is there aught else that you desire of me at our parting? For darkness will flow between us, and it may be that we shall not meet again, unless it be far hence upon a road that has no returning." And Aragorn answered, "Lady, you know all my desire, and long held in keeping the only treasure that I seek. Yet it is not yours to give me, even if you would, and only through darkness shall I come to it." "Yet maybe this will lighten your heart," said Galadriel, "for it was left in my care to be given to you, should you pass through this land." Then she lifted from her lap a great stone of a clear green, set in a silver brooch that was wrought in the likeness of an eagle with outspread wings. And as she held it up, the gem flashed like the sun shining through the leaves of spring. "This stone I gave to Celebrian my daughter, and she to hers. And now it comes to you as a token of hope. In this hour, take the name that was foretold for you, Elessar, the elf stone of the house of Elendil." Then Aragorn took the stone and pinned the brooch upon his breast, and those who saw him wondered, for they had not marked before how tall and kingly he stood, and it seemed to them that many years of toil had fallen from his shoulders. "For the gifts that you have given me, I thank you," he said, "O Lady of Lorien, of whom were sprung Celebrian and Arwen Evenstar. What praise could I say more?" Now, in taking a closer look at this Elessar, we're going to go back to Unfinished Tales and the history of Galadriel and Celeborn, where we're given a bit more on its backstory. And by a bit more, I mean two separate versions of its backstory, but I'm getting ahead of myself. That's two versions of the backstory of this Elessar given to Aragorn by Galadriel. Now, originally, the Elessar, maybe this one we just saw, maybe not, that's the two backstories, we'll get to that, was crafted by a jewelsmith by the name of Enerthil way back in the First Age in Gondolin. Enerthil was said to be the greatest jewelsmith of the Noldor after Feanor's death. We read that he loved all green things that grew, and his greatest joy was to see the sunlight through the leaves of trees. And it came into his heart to make a jewel within which the clear light of the sun should be imprisoned, but the jewel should be green as leaves. It is said that those who looked through this stone saw things that were withered or burned, healed again, or as they were in the grace of their youth, and that the hands of one who held it brought to all that they touched healing from hurt. This gem Enerthil gave to Idril, the king's daughter, and she wore it upon her breast, and so it was saved from the burning of Gondolin. And before Idril set sail, she said to Eärendil her son, "The Elessar I leave with thee, for there are grievous hurts to Middle-earth, which thou maybe shalt heal, but to none other shalt thou deliver it." And indeed, at Sirion's haven there were many hurts to heal, both of men and elves, and of beasts that fled thither from the horror of the north. And while Eärendil dwelt there, they were healed and prospered, and all things were for a while green and fair. Now, he took it with him when he sailed, searching for his parents. There's a reason for that. We read that his first memory of Middle-earth was the green stone above her breast as she sang above his cradle while Gondolin was still in flower. Since he wore it when he sailed, the Elessar is said to have passed away. So now we get to this Elessar, the second one, or maybe it's the first one. Let's get to that. When in ages after there was again an Elessar, we are told there are two possible origins, though which is true only those wise could say who now are gone. Now, the first origin is that the second Elessar wasn't a second one at all, but actually the original, returned by the grace of the Valar and carried back to Middle-earth by Olorin. Now, in this version, he brings it to Galadriel.
This I bring to you from Yavanna. Use it as you may, and for a while you shall make the land of your dwelling the fairest place in Middle-earth.
However, he tells her she won't get to keep it. She has to hand it on at the right time.
For before you grow weary and at last forsake Middle-earth, one shall come who is to receive it, and his name shall be that of the stone. Elessar he shall be called.
Now, the other origin is that Celebrimbor made this stone a second Elessar for Galadriel, prior to them being diluted by Sauron, and that was almost, but not quite, as good as the original. Quote, more subtle and clear was the green gem that he made than that of Eärendil, but yet its light had less power. Radiant nonetheless was the Elessar of Celebrimbor, and he set it within a great brooch of silver in the likeness of an eagle rising upon outspread wings. Now, when Galadriel wore it, all things grew fair, but once she received Nenya, she gave the Elessar to her daughter Celebrian, who married Elrond, and from her it went to her daughter Arwen, and then back to Galadriel to give to Aragorn. So we don't know if the Elessar that Aragorn received from Galadriel in Lothlorien back when she was handing out gifts was the original one, actually made in Gondolin, worn by Eärendil, and returned from Valinor by Mithrandir, and that's the one I want to believe, or a copy made by the same smith who crafted the 3 rings. Now, what we do know is that it's another example of the backstories that Professor Tolkien often created, even those stories that he wasn't sure we'd ever be able to read. Now, even though we are long already on this episode, I'm not done with that backstory and the way Tolkien created these details. Because if we go to Laws and Customs Among the Eldar in Morgoth's Ring, we read this. Among the Noldor also it was a custom that the bride's mother should give to the bridegroom a jewel upon a chain or collar. These gifts were sometimes given before the feast. Thus, the gift of Galadriel to Aragorn, since she was in place of Arwen's mother, was in part a bridal gift, an earnest of the wedding that was later accomplished. This is the sort of richness of detail, the interweaving of customs and traditions, histories and legends that make Tolkien's world come alive. Folks, thank you for joining me for this week's Third Age Thursday. And be sure to come back tomorrow as we continue the story of Tuor and his coming to Gondolin on First Age Friday. And check out patreon.com/Tolkien Times to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, join my content council, get a bonus weekly episode, and more. Podcast listeners, please be sure to subscribe to the show in your podcast apps. For those on YouTube, give me a like and then subscribe to this channel to get all of the PPP productions. Everybody be sure you're following @PrancingPonyPod on all your social media. And finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.